Welcome to Householders, a conversation about American life as Zen practice. I'm Inga Annie Wade.
And I'm Kyosaku John Mitchell, and we're lay members of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center. Tell me about how Zen came into the picture for you.
I think I've always struggled with anxiety, and when I was a teenager, I struggled with depression as well, especially when my uncle died, and my sister actually gave me a book by Thich Nhat Hanh on the death of a loved one. That really spoke to me. I was about 17 years old when I read that book, but I definitely didn't start practicing then. It was just something that was always in the back of my mind that really resonated with me. And then I moved to Atlanta when I was about 23. And I was in a relationship with the man that I would marry in the future. And we sort of have different attachment styles, where I'm sort of like the needy one and he's sort of the detached one. And those two attachment styles seem to be attracted to each other, but it doesn't always work very well. But we were both pretty set on making it work. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to get my anxieties under control, first of all. I know that that's what I can do on my end. And thinking back to the book that I had read by Thich Nhat Hanh, I was like, I think I need a meditation practice. I went to several different meditation places. And
what kinds?
I went to Siddha Yoga, and that one's basically like a chanting practice. That didn't really resonate with me very much. And then I went to Shambhala, meditated with them, which I thought was really nice. But the reason I stayed with the Atlanta Soto Zen Center was because of this great sense of community that was there. And I felt like, that I could be friends with these people and that they were just very down to earth.
Did you feel that the other places you visited were lacking in the element of community, or was it just more like these people felt like your people and those people, it didn't work for whatever reason?
Yeah, I think they did have a community at those other places too, but it didn't feel like, I felt like an outsider in those communities. Like you have to work really hard to be a part of the community there.
Work hard at what?
Fitting in.
Like being outgoing, talking to everyone.
Yeah. So for example, in Siddha Yoga, there was a big cultural barrier there. There was a lot of things about the practice that were very cultural to that region, like the very importance placed on the guru. And I went during their founder ceremony like we have here, and we chanted his name for over an hour.
This is a person who wasn't there, like a sort of historical teacher person?
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty recent, but he was definitely dead. So, and, there's some rules about like not putting your feet towards, certain areas. And I think a lot of practices have those kind of rules. But for whatever reason, I just didn't feel like I fit in there.
Sure.
It was the same with the Shambhala Center. It felt like it was kind of restricted in a way that if you wanted to be a part of the community, you would have to probably be going for several years before somebody noticed that you were there. When I finally landed at Atlanta Soto Zen Center, I knew that was the one.
The first time?
Yeah, the first time I went there. I mean, I think also that I'm sort of a weeaboo, like a Japan nerd.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm self-proclaimed. People don't know that by looking at me, but I'm definitely a weeaboo. And I just love all things Japan. And Zen made sense. Thich Nhat Hanh is a Zen Buddhist, so it was my early introduction to Buddhism was with Zen. So it all just fit together for me. The people, the atmosphere, the teachings.
Can you remember what happened? What was the first thing that you went to?
The first thing was the introduction to Zen class. They were just very friendly and very relaxed and it felt comfortable.
Did you sit Zazen?
Yeah.
Cool. And then discuss?
Yeah. They just go over the basics with you and then you meditate for like 10 minutes. And that's about it. And then I think this time we actually had tea, which was really nice. I love green tea.
And then when did you come back? When was the next time?
I came to that one. They encourage you to go a couple of times. You might get different teachers. And then after that, after I felt comfortable with practicing like that, I went to the Monday night book club.
Do you remember what they were reading?
Yes, we were reading Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind.
Oh, great. Good place to start.
It was an awesome place to start. I recommend that if anybody's starting Zen to start with that book. It was very exciting learning to train your mind in a different way. Kind of like when you get into college and they start teaching you philosophy or something. And you're like, okay, this is much different than what I'm used to thinking.
So how did it kick in? At what point did you start sort of identifying with that and thinking about it, or stop thinking about it and start just sort of living that way? How did this absorb into your life?
Well, I mean, I went for a while at the beginning with the Monday night book club, and then I found out that I could get counseling for free because I'm disabled and I live off Social Security. You can get some perks from that, thankfully. And one of them was being able to have therapy, which was actually down the road from the Atlanta Soda Zen Center. And I went there for 4 years. And during that 4 years, I didn't go to Zen as much. But I kind of felt like it was either or. And I did feel a little trapped over at the therapy center because they had me in a dialectical behavioral therapy class too. So I was going twice a week, and I didn't feel like with school, because I was a full-time student, I didn't feel like I really had enough time to go to Zen on top of that. So those 4 years were a little scant. I didn't go a whole lot. And then I started back after those 4 years of therapy, and I went back and I was like, you just knew like that the whole time I had really wanted that. I'd really been like, yeah, this DBT is great and I really love talking to my therapist, but there's something about meditation that puts me in a state of mind that works better for me than therapy.
Mm-hmm. When did you take the precepts?
Once I came back and I started going to Sunday. That I had never gone to Sunday before. There was just something in me that wanted to start practicing seriously. And Sensei finally noticed me. I really hadn't had much interaction with Sensei before then. I filmed this video for class, which they did use on the STO website for a while. And that was my first interaction with Sensei. And then so when I started coming back, I went to the Sunday service, and I think that was an even greater sense of community there because, well, one, Sensei, I mean, he's very welcoming.
Yeah. And,
I felt like he wanted me to be there. And then so I just asked him if I could take the precepts, and he was like, yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. How does being an initiate in Soto Zen affect you on a daily basis, having a name and whatnot?
It is different for sure, because before I would be like, okay, I can't do Zen for a while, and then I would just disappear,
Mm-hmm.
But I don't do that anymore. Like, mm-hmm. I make it a priority to be a part in some way. Mm-hmm. Even if I don't have a lot of time, I still want to show up, like whether it's for the community part of it where I'm doing the work. I redesigned the Atlanta Soda Zen Center website as a UX designer with a design team that we put together, and the Silent Thunder Order website. And that also gives me a lot of pride, not in like the hubris sense. Just
yeah.
It makes me happy, that to be a part of, to help in some way. So I think I've done a lot more of the community type effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to get more back to like the actual meditation part and the Dharma. But for a while, it's been a lot of the community, you know, having the three parts. Sometimes you focus on more one area than the other.
Sure. I guess that's why they're three, right?
Yeah. We could probably go on all day, but I do want to hear how you got started and, you know, your story. I wonder if it's as long and chopped up as mine.
Sure it is. These are stories that we can tell in an infinitely unfolding way, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure we will. But my encounter with Buddhism was around the same age yours was, maybe 15, 16. And it was also a book. And I don't even remember if someone gave me the book. I think that, I mean, it's actually probably worth going further back than that in the story. And, you know, I was raised in a Jewish family that was culturally very Jewish. And, you know, we went to Sundays. My younger brother and I went to Sunday school and Tuesday Hebrew school after school every week. And, you know, we had, you know, a conservative Jewish education and, you know, observed the holidays for the most part. And, you know, there was at least some sort of Shabbat practice in our house. And we were both trained for bar mitzvah ceremonies. And I got the feeling that it was a very high priority in my family. Religion, specifically Judaism, was a high priority in our family, but it never felt like it was inside of me. It always felt like it was this external thing that I was expected to participate in, but it felt kind of hollow. Like I felt like I was going through emotions that were expected of me, but I wasn't really feeling anything inside. And as I, you know, became a teenager, I started to reason my way out of it and to sort of express it in kind of atheist terms or whatever. But there were that wasn't ever really quite right.
How old were you when you were starting to go through your atheist phase?
I would say I was 12 or 13 because there was a sort of pivotal moment where I was expected to give a speech at my bar mitzvah, which was in Israel. We'll get, I feel like this is like an episode unto itself, the whole like religious upbringing thing.
Yeah.
But there was a moment at which I was planning to say in front of my family, like, I don't believe in God.
Wow.
At a religious ceremony that I was the star of. And my voice broke when I said it. And I sort of didn't know quite at the time that wasn't exactly true with the words that were coming out of my mouth. But I knew that it was more complicated than I thought it had been. Like, it had seemed so simple in my mind, but then emotionally it wasn't, right? So I think what that did was it sort of set off this spiritual quest that wasn't framed in any specific terminology of anybody else other than myself. Or really, there was no terminology at all. I just sort of found my heart, you know, I found my soul in me somewhere, and I could feel it. And I began sort of experimenting with it. And I did pull from books and, you know, like Wicca and other sort of 60s hippie stuff that I was reading.
Yeah,
but
me too.
then I tried things. I did magic, you know, like I tried all these things and it worked, you know. And what I mean by worked is it sort of woke me up in this way that praying according to the prayer book I was handed when I was in second grade, like, never did anything for me up to that point. And so then I started finding all these things that were bringing me to life. And somewhere around that time, 15 or 16, I read this book about the Buddha, and it was a contemporary book. I feel like I actually just sort of picked it up on my own because it was a new book that was getting like New York Times Book Awards or something. And it was a contemporary Indian American writer who sort of went to his ancestral North Indian region to retrace his own steps. Like he felt like he was disconnected from culture and from his upbringing and spirituality and all that stuff. He knew there was something he was missing. And so he went there and sort of encountered the Buddha as this looming figure over the people there, and researched the story and life of the Buddha, and ended up telling that story in a way that was sort of intertwined with his own upbringing as like a, you know, privileged Indian guy who was out of touch with reality and then made contact with the world outside and realized like the truth about being alive in some sense. And so he sort of saw it as a parallel. And that really struck me. The first encounter with Buddhism I had was with the biography of the Buddha, according to the sort of general telling of it. And I was like, oh, I kind of see myself in that. Like, you know, you have to go outside of this comfortable upbringing that you have in order to see what the world is really like. And the Buddha did that. And he ended up finding something universal in it that could be, that was a way of coming to life for everyone, which was very different from this Jewish special chosen thing that I was raised with. And I don't remember if I tried sitting meditation at that time, but I definitely locked Buddhism in as something that I cared about. And when I got to college was when I was first given the opportunity to practice. And there was this whole academic movement at my school that was trying to incorporate meditation practice into the curriculum so that we could study Buddhism and contemplative practices, but not the way the religious studies department did. It was a religious studies professor who sort of objected to the idea that you could study religion or spirituality itself without participating in it, as though it was some sort of scientific thing that you could just dissect and look at the anatomy of and understand. And of course, this traditional sort of Western academics wanted nothing to do with sitting in meditation as part of coursework.
What school was that?
This was at Brown University, and the program was called the Contemplative Studies Initiative, and it's now a department. Like now undergrads who go to Brown can major in this, but we all had to create independent concentrations and get deans to approve them and stuff. But that's what I did. And so like I ended up kind of studying, I actually studied a sort of musical flavor of the contemplative studies program, studying sort of ritual music and contemplative music traditions and playing a lot of music and recording a lot of music.
I love that
as part of my major. And it was amazing. But the core of the program that we all did, no matter what our specialty was Zen meditation. And Hal Roth, the advisor, creator of the Contemplative Studies Initiative, was a Rinzai Zen initiate who'd studied for a long time. So he became our Zen teacher, and we took, and all the sort of intro to Buddhism and Taoism and classes like that were all taught by him. So we did a lot of the reading. I got familiar with a lot of the sort of Mahayana variations and then and the evolution of Zen. But he had this funny emphasis on Rinzai as like sort of the serious form of Zen. So there was always there were these moments. I mean, we read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind in one of these classes. Like we read a little bit of Dogen, but there was mostly Rinzai stuff we were reading, especially like the contemporary sort of introduction to Zen books. They were all like koans were a big part of it, and Zazen was not, your eyes were closed, and it was a slightly different form.
Sensei has described Rinzai as the warrior Zen and Soto Zen as the farmer Zen.
Yeah. And I always felt like a little more of a farmer, I think.
Me too.
And it was not quite fitting, but we had all these teachers, different traditions, but there were a few Zen teachers, come to campus and lead these retreats, 1, 2-day, 3-day retreats. And so I did like intensive practice with a variety of teachers, and felt like I got a really good exposure to what was out there. And then went out into the world with my practice, as such as it was, and had a much longer wander before coming back to formal Zen practice this year. I had a Zen practice. I would call the meditation that I did throughout Zazen, but it was independent. Or it was mixed with Judaism, or it was mixed with this. I have a whole Burning Man chapter of my life that I'm sure will come up. But I was doing this practice sort of off and on. But it wasn't until this year when I realized that I was moving back to Atlanta finally, because I grew up here, and that I could find a Sangha that I could join, that I could stay with. I've moved around a lot in the last 10 years, and got married and had kids, and the settling down was about to begin. And so this year I was finally like, I really should find a Soto Zen Sangha. Like that's what by that point I was like familiar enough with what that meant that I knew it was a thing I wanted to try in the proper container of a Sangha with a teacher. And so, month 2 of the pandemic, I Googled Atlanta Soto Zen and found our Sangha. And I ended up encountering Ellison Roshi.
What were your first impressions of Ellison Roshi?
Oh, I thought he was exactly who I was looking for. I sort of had been looking for a teacher my whole life who would be someone I could sit face to face with and take seriously and not take too seriously, and who would take me just the right amount of seriously. And I really saw that in him right away. I could tell that his practice was very sincere, but I also could tell that he wasn't holding on to it too tightly. And like you were saying about the warriors and in Rinzai Zen, like I did kind of feel like the people I was sitting with in college took it too seriously. They held on too tightly to what they were supposed to be doing and supposed to look like. And I could tell that wasn't his thing.
Sometimes I imagine like the Zen sensei is just like, he's sitting there and you ask him a question and he's just all like, I know everything, so I automatically know the answers to the universe, and you must respect me. Mm-hmm. I don't know how true that is, but that was my initial thought of like how these religious figures would be. Maybe because the pastors at my churches were kind of like that.
And I think I had that sense too. I thought of like a master, like a Zen master or a Buddhist master, as like a very serious person. I mean, I knew that was not supposed to be true in some sense. Like we read all the Lynchy stories, all the crazy stories about like hitting people with sticks and stuff when I was in college, and like just yelling incoherently at people as a way of teaching them Zen. But like I'd never met a person who was like that before. And I kind of got the sense that Ellison Roshi was that kind of person, but was being polite. Oh, and I was living in Philadelphia at the time. So I was like, I'm not here yet. I'm not in Atlanta yet, but I assume it doesn't matter because you're all sitting virtually anyway.
Right.
And by the time we're able to, come together in person again, I'll be all settled in Atlanta and everything will be fine. So let me just join now. And so I started doing this sort of the multi-Sangha sit at 7 a.m. On Zoom. That's like some ASCC people and some people from elsewhere too. It just turned out not to work with my schedule. It was too late. I need to sit like at 5:30 in the morning or my kids are all up and it's, my day is all shot. But that was the first thing I did. I also I joined the other book club, the Cross STO book club, and did that for a few weeks. And I was coming on every Sunday too. And that was where I sort of met everyone and got a sense of what was going on and saw what the ritual container for this Sangha was like, and found it really comfortable and really, unpretentious and real, and felt super welcomed the whole time. And like you, I also sort of found ways to plug in my skills, like my digital creativity, as a way of giving back to the Sangha. And at a time, I'm sure you feel the same way, at a time when like most of what the Sangha is doing is digital in nature.
Yeah.
It felt like as meaningful a way to contribute as there could be, given that we're not there to like sweep because there's no one there.
Right. It's very important to have that digital presence.
Yeah. And so these podcasts were sort of the thing I came up with, and Sensei was all about it. And so we got his podcast going, and now here you and I are sort of coming up with the second iteration. And the end of my first story about like how this practice came into my life is that I've never had anything that just I never had anything new come into my life and land so just neatly and stay and just be such a steady, stable part of who I am and what I do as this. And that's just sort of how I know it was the right place and the right people and the right practice. And, like I said, I sort of kept up my sitting practice throughout the 10 years of wandering, but it's never been like it is now either, because I feel like I'm sitting with people, even though, literally or physically I'm not. But, having this Sangha has really changed everything surrounding my sitting practice. And when I get up from the cushion, I sort of still feel all of y'all there, even though we're not sitting next to each other, but I can't wait until we do, you know.
Yeah, I'm really excited when we get to, go back to the Sangha too. But it's good that we have this digital and Zoom presence so that, people like you can still join. Because I think that was a worry that, well, if we don't have the practice at the Sangha, like, are we gonna, lose membership? Are people gonna still come,
Yeah.
And it turns out they do.
Yeah, totally. It feels super strong to me. Like I don't know how other Sanghas around the country are doing, around the world are doing, but a lot of them, I mean, I follow a lot of them online, and a lot of them seem like they're kind of worried. And I don't hear that here. I feel like we're all adapting pretty well, and people show up for the Zoom calls and stuff. And I mean, I did take Jukai a month ago. That was when we first met in person, and we did it outside with social distancing and everything. But like, my whole family got to come and be on the lawn, and there were 7 of us. We did the forms, and Sensei was there, and there was incense, and we got our vestments and everything. So I still feel like we took our photo, I still feel like I've been physically part of this. But the fact that got pulled together to have Jukai and to have Zaike Tokudo for the new disciples the week after, despite everything that's going on, like, I feel like this Sangha is really clear-eyed about what needs to happen in order to maintain Sangha through, the rest of this pandemic and for the future. And I hope it also means that there's I think it does. Clearly it does mean that it's also, it's kind of loosening the bonds of what it means to be like a local Sangha. And STO already was this big network. There's people all over the place, and there was already some like online collaboration there. But, what I'm hoping that having regular podcast style conversations will do is expand our community, that this wonderful tight-knit community that we're able to have, out into the world for people who are all over the place looking for people like us.
I think the coronavirus has really been a catalyst to be able to do this. When we redesigned the Silent Thunder Order website, we had that in mind, that we wanted to bring people together and create an atmosphere that you didn't have to be local in order to be a part of the bigger Sangha, the larger Silent Thunder Order Sangha. And I think that this is working. It's working because of people like you too, who are willing to be like, I can see potential in this becoming something bigger, and I want to help out.
Well, that's what we're going to do here on Householders, is we're going to expand that potential, and the conversation that we have will sort of begin from the place of like you and me talking. But I think that we're going to branch out into not only talking to other people, which is something that I really look forward to doing, both the people in our lives that we encounter while we're trying to maintain our Zen practice, like our family members or friends or whatever, but also other members of our Sangha and our teachers and whoever else will serve the conversation that we're trying to have. But we'll also be branching out into various topics, the things that come up for lay people who practicing Zen. And I guess this is probably sounds like the beginning of the show, but I should frame what we're doing here a little bit more. Like, we're lay people, like we've said in this story that we've told. Like, we're I don't know what your plans are. I don't know what my plans are. But like right now, I'm not planning to be a Zen teacher. I'm planning to be a rabbi's husband and a father of daughters and a person who lives an American life, much like the lives of other Americans. But Zen practice is like core to how I do that. And I think that one of the messages that I want to send by doing this with you is that that's core Zen practice. You don't need to be a monk to practice Zen, and you don't even need to look up to monks to practice Zen. That's the whole teaching of our kind of Zen, is that the practice is everywhere at all times. The Dharma is everywhere at all times. And like, we are given tons of opportunities to do Zen practice just by walking down the street or washing the dishes or changing diapers or whatever it is. When my second daughter that was born in September was about to be born, Sensei Indoka-san said to me, that baby's going to be your Zen teacher now.
Yep.
You know, almost in a like, I'm not going to be your Zen teacher anymore. That baby is going to be your Zen teacher kind of way. And obviously, like, that's not true. And also, like, everyone is your Zen teacher. And that was kind of the joke he was making. But he was definitely right. I'm glad he was there to warn me this time, because I thought I remembered what it was like to have a newborn baby and to try and sort of keep yourself and your life like on rails. But my older daughter's 2 now, so clearly I'd forgotten, and it's just all crazy around here now. But like, my Zen practice is still rock solid every day, and that's the kind of stuff I want to talk about, is like, how do we do that, and how you and I do that, and how the people who we get to talk with us do that.
You know, since I have this background I've read a bunch of Thich Nhat Hanh books. You know, he goes into how to live every single moment in your life, you know, in a Zen practice. Mm-hmm. How to find these moments where you can practice, and you don't have to necessarily just be sitting to do that, or like everything can be a part of the practice. And that's the kind of attitude I like to have when continuing the practice, that sometimes before I was more committed to it, I would think that if I don't go to Zen, I'm not doing Zen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true. But it is very important, don't get me wrong. And, you know, there's definitely benefits to it. But you can't think of it as either I'm not doing Zen or I am doing Zen. It has to be more integral and integrated into your life.
Householders is a production of the Atlanta Soto Zen Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and the Silent Thunder Order. Find us on the web at ASZC.org.
Our Sangha depends on your support. You can donate by PayPal to donate at storder.org. Gasho.